Israeli elections. Harsh criticism towards Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu after he unveils a plan for a two-party political system. Changing Mid-East alliances. Turkish media reports Hamas chief Khalid Mash'al has been expelled from Qatar. Hamas denies, and the Israeli Foreign Ministry is quick to praise the move. Wintry weather hits across the Middle East. Jerusalem, Syria, and Lebanon are expecting a snowstorm to strike tonight.
The News Today with Lucy Aharish.
Good evening and welcome to the News Today. Election promises, most of them never come true. In his 6 years as Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu didn't promote the change of the chaotic election system. But yesterday he spoke at a Likud party event under the banner Vote Likud to change the system. So revolutionize the Israeli multi-party political system and change it to one with two main parties like in the United States. Could this be the ticket to win office once more? 2.5 months before Election Day, polls show that the race is too tight to call. We will go tonight to our correspondents at the Likud party headquarters, Eli Ochenberg, Faleh Habib, and Leah Bardugo. But first, let's take a look back.
שיטת ממשל זה לא זוג גרביים, אני נוהג לומר את זה. זה לא זוג גרביים, שיטת ממשל שאתה מחליף כל יום. ב100 הימים הראשונים של הכנסת הבאה נחוקק חוק שמבטיח את שינוי שיטת הממשל בישראל.
אני כאן כי אני מאמינה שיצחק הרצוג יכול וצריך להיות ראש הממשלה הבא של מדינת ישראל.
ראש המפלגה הגדולה הוא זה שאוטומטית ירכיב את הממשלה.
ציפי לבני ואני מציעים לכם אזרחי ישראל תקווה חדשה ועתיד טוב יותר.
Promises, and it's a good thing that we have the internet. Reminds us some promises. But with me here to remind me even more is Dr. Hani Zubaydah, Professor of Political Science at the Israel Valley College. Good evening.
Good evening, Lucy.
Good to have you. And Roni Rimon, Strategic Consultant. Good evening. Good to have you. So, gentlemen, really, it's not that we don't have major problems in Israel, like poverty, like education, failed education, or failed welfare system, or failed, 100 and 2,050 things. But right now, if you want to change the system, vote Likud.
Well, I think for those of us with weak memories, let's start counting back. 1996, Benjamin Netanyahu is the prime minister. He loses in 1999, and then he regains power 5 years ago, almost 6 years ago. And then, unfortunately, he had all this time to change the system, which he didn't. A miserable attempt which failed miserably, and that's an understatement of this day. In 96, to change the electoral system into two ballots, one direct for the prime minister and the other for the parties, completely fractionized the party system. And right now, another, I should say, when I listen to him as somebody who knows a little bit about elections, it seems far-fetched, and I'm again being an understater today because I can't really understand what does he want to do. Because if what he said today is the right thing, then Tzipi Livni should have been the prime minister about 5 years ago when she won the majority of votes. Mm-hmm. I don't really know what he's doing. I know one thing he's doing, and that's for sure. He's trying to divert us from the issue on the table, and that's the economy.
Of course. Why is he doing this? When he knows that people actually went to these elections on two tickets. One, the economy. The second is the diplomatic, political situation, let's say Palestinians, Israeli, that also is on the table right now.
First of all,
governing system.
First of all, elections are never on issues, but on people. So the elections are whether you want this leader or that leader. The issues are just an excuse, okay? Now, I think he wants to talk about the political system, the system of the elections, because he wants to show that the Likud, that everybody who wants him as a prime minister should vote Likud, because the system in Israel, as Dr. Zbeda said, is very fractionized, and nobody can has a majority of the vote. So he says, I am going to change the system, but till then, give power to the big parties.
Well, he's doing the Believe Me again. Yeah, I think he's going all over back to the campaign that Tzipi Livni handled way back when she was the head of Kadima and they won the majority of votes.
Yes,
not
2009.
Not majoritarian vote, but majority of vote. They won about 28 seats. And she said, I'm the one who should be the prime minister. And then Netanyahu said, no, you're not. Because the person who should be the prime minister is the one who's being recommended by the most parliament member, which is true. The thing is, what we're seeing is they're looking for technicalities. And technicalities are never the issues. We can play with the machine, but if the machine's broken, we might need to replace it. And I think in this day and era where everybody faces this really debacle, diplomatic, economic.
What are the chances that, before I will ask you, what are the chances that somebody will change what is happening right now in Israel, or will change the prime minister, or is it actually his best ticket and he's just playing a game because he knows that at the end of the day he will be elected again? Before we will continue, here's more from our correspondent Eli Ochenberg. Let's see what she prepared for us.
Campaign season has officially begun, with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu launching his Likud party's election drive with a very non-apologetic stance. The first subject on the agenda, mocking the new center-left bloc, led by two of the premier's main opponents, Labour leader Isaac Herzog and Atnua leader Tzipi Livni.
I just want to ask you, are they the ones to keep Israeli citizens safe? Will they stand against Hamas, Hezbollah, Iran?
At the festive event at which Netanyahu presented 30 Likud contenders for the upcoming elections, the cheering crowd applauded enthusiastically as Netanyahu slammed his main rivals.
They won't stand up to international pressure for even a moment. I'll tell you why. Not just because they're weak. They're also weak. But also because they want to surrender. That has been the path of the left for 20 years now.
But Netanyahu is not only focused on winning the 2015 elections, he's also thinking in the long run.
We will legislate a new law during the first 100 days of the new parliament that will secure the change of system of government in Israel. In the new elections, not these ones, those in hopefully 4 years from now, the head of the biggest party will be the one to form the new coalition.
Under the current system, which Netanyahu and many others argue makes Israel ungovernable, the president consults all parties on their preferred choice for prime minister and then appoints the candidate whom he deems to have the best prospects of putting together a coalition. The moment the coalition broke up and elections were declared, it was clear it would be a fierce and a personal battle. Now, as the parties are launching their campaigns, it is getting even clearer. Israeli politicians are not here to play nice.
And with us right now, Eli Ochenberg is at the Likud party headquarters in Tel Aviv. Good evening, Eli. So, Eli, it seems that everything is personal, and it is getting personal in the last few days.
Absolutely, Lucy. It's a head-to-head battle, and basically it seems that each and every contender in this election race have a nemesis for Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. It's a Labour leader and a Atnua leader, Isaac Herzog and Tzipi Livni. For them both, it's Benjamin Netanyahu. For Lapid, Yesh Atid, leader, of course, Yair Lapid, it's the corrupted ones. For Naftali Bennett, the leader of the Jewish Home, it's the it's the two apologetic ones. And for Libi Lieberman, Avigdor Lieberman from Israel Beitenu. It's the police. Anyway, it's been a really harsh statement yesterday from Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, and we can be more than certain that these sorts of spicy statements will just keep on coming in the next few months.
But you know, Ellie, it seems that he has been doing very good in the last few days in the polls. It seems that maybe at the end of the day, at the 17th of March, we will wake up and we will end up seeing Benjamin Netanyahu as the Prime Minister again.
Absolutely, Lucy. According to the last two polls, one of them conducted by the Israeli Channel 1 and the other one by the Parliament's channel, the Likud is leading with 25 or 24 seats, in contrast to the joint list of the Labour and Atnua with 24 or 23 seats. And many analysts expected this shift, that the Likud will gain power and the Labour and the Atnua will stay a bit back. But the interesting question is to see whether one of them will have a great leap forward or it will be a tight race until the end. But we must bear in mind that we are now at the middle of the first phase that will last until the end of January. This is the phase of primary elections, and setting up the main phase, the second one, will be the head-to-head battles between the parties and the blocs. And the last one, in my opinion, maybe the most interesting one, will be the behind-the-scenes schemes and deals to establish potential coalitions. So there's many coming, and we'll of course keep on following closely each and every development. But as for now, the first stage is not disappointing.
Now, from the rumors that are getting to us, it seems that all the parties, left and right, are really, really, really worried or scared. So nothing is sure yet. Thank you very much, Eli Ochenberg. The chances that he will be re-elected are really big.
Yes, they are. I think he managed to do one great thing, well, two great things in the past couple of days. One, his list is way more moderate than it used to be. He managed to kick out the Jewish leadership group, which is Feiglin, and Dani Danon is way down the list, and he might get another woman in there, but he's not so sure which is going to be. He's got the 11th place reserved, so he is posing a very moderate team, I should say, number one. Number two, let me remind you, in the second election of George Bush Jr., when he faced Kerry, while the economy was in a shamble and the war in Iraq was killing the United States, the main item on the agenda of that election was same-sex marriage. Okay? Same-sex marriage. And I should mention one thing. Dick Cheney's daughter is out of the closet lesbian who's living with a woman, even though they were hammering the Democrats on a same-sex marriage scam. Now, I should mention, this election, although the economy is in shambles, the diplomatic situation is in shambles, no negotiation between Israel and the Palestinians, we are going to talk about changing the governmental or the electoral system? Really?
This is what I'm trying to understand. What is changing when the campaign is choose Likud to change the system?
In my opinion, it won't happen. It's not a strong enough issue in order to have a campaign about it. Okay?
And he did. This is what he presented yesterday.
So this doesn't matter. I mean,
no, I'm just saying.
One can choose a wrong subject. Okay? It will not catch. Okay? Changing the system is not going to catch. It's not going to be the number one or two or three or fourth issue in my opinion. I think that the economy and the character of the candidates will take the first place, unless of course there is going to be a small war or something like this, which is always number one. However, I want to have one remark. Your correspondent and all the media are talking about who is going to be the biggest party in Israel, whether the Labour Party has 24 or the Likud has 25 or 23. It doesn't matter. It's like the electoral system in the States, in which you have to have like, let's say, more electoral votes when you go to the president. Which means which parties are going to support you. And the right-wing voters has actually a majority, because if you combine all the right-wing voters, you come to around, I counted around 72 seats. The problem of Netanyahu is that some of the parties who get their votes from right-wing people are not necessarily going, as they used to be in the past, to give their support to Netanyahu. They are, let's say, they are not committed to Netanyahu anymore.
Well, there's a huge disagreement as to what is right and what is left and what is the center. I think that while counting the 72, there's an error because the main chunk, the median voter, is right there in the middle, and they're not necessarily right and they're not left. We have people who are sitting on the fence in that term. I think the most important, two highlights in these elections. One, will the Arab parties consolidate into one major list? And that might change completely the way the Arabs vote. In Israel, we have 22 to 25% Arabs. The youngest community in Israel, the fastest growing community in Israel. We have, the numbers are about 10% of the Arabs are voting, give or take. If a consolidated list will appear, all the polls are showing at this point, without knowing how the order is going to be, 15 seats, which is more than ever.
The Arab parties.
Yeah, the Arab parties, 15 seats.
If they go together.
Yes, if they go together at this point without campaign, without knowing the order. If they will consolidate their action together, not fight through the campaign as we know the Arab community might do because of disagreements, and the northern and the southern fraction of the Muslim movement, Sheikh Raed Salah, will say the word, go out and vote in this election, we might face a block of 22 to 30 seats of Arab parliament members, and that might sway the system altogether. We have to remember that.
Let me correct you, if I may.
Sure.
The percentage of the Arabs who has the right to vote is 14.5%. Although there are 20 to 22%.
I mentioned they're the youngest. But you have to take into consideration that Israelis vote on average 60%. What I'm saying is that if they will vote, if the northern Muslim fraction, Sheikh Raed Salah, will say, go out and vote in numbers, we might see doubling their powers in the population.
I think you exaggerate a little bit. I do agree that they can reach up to about 14 to 15 seats if they vote like the Jewish people in Israel.
14 to 15 we see right now, and that's exactly what I'm saying.
Now they get 11.
If they vote 60, now in the polls
they get 11.
You are saying that the Arab minority in Israel might be a deal breaker?
The Arab minority in Israel might be a deal breaker because what we're thinking, if they vote like the Israeli parliament members, which is what I suggested, they would get to 15. But if they double their vote, which means get to 80-90% of vote, and that is possible within the Arab minority, because we know in the municipality they vote 80, 90, and 95%, then we might see doubling their power. I'm not saying that will happen.
No, but what I want to say that the Knesset will not have more than 120 seats, which means that if the Arabs will, as you predict, might have or may have, according to your belief, let's say 20 seats, okay? In my opinion,
this can actually reflect their percentage in the population, which can say
it's not.
Why not?
Because the part in the voters are only 14.5%. Okay, it's not 20%. Now, if they have 20 seats,
that's not true. It's not 40.5%.
Okay, but let's go.
It's not 40.5%.
Okay, I'm taking your word that it's going to be 20. They are going to reduce the members of the Labour Party, of the left.
Definitely.
So what will happen is that the left will not be bigger than before. Just what will happen that the Arabs are going to be more. So the left parties like the Labour Party and Meretz and all of them together will have much more difficulties to form a government.
The effect will be on the entire parliament, period. And the question then migrates to the center, which is what you counted as the right, and I disagree. It's not right. Yair Lapid is not necessarily right.
But Kahlon voters.
Kahlon is right.
Kahlon voters is right. Are right.
But
the Orthodox.
Shas voters are Likud traditionally. However, it was Rabbi Ovadia who said, we should save every drop of blood if we think about land, which is not a rightist statement.
But they are, if they want a Shas voter, if he is not going to vote Shas, he will vote either to the Likud or to Kahlon, okay? Which means that in his opinion, he is right. He is in the right.
But it has nothing to do.
Lieberman voters. Just a moment. Yes. Lieberman's voters.
What you're trying to I understand. You're trying to pin. You're trying to pin, and you're trying.
Dr. Zveda, I came to this studio in order to convey my message.
Oh yeah, of course.
But I can't do it. But I can't do it if I'm going to be lectured all the time.
No, God forbid. All I'm saying is that you're repeating the same pattern of voters, which I disagree.
But you are interrupting me again.
Sorry. Here you go.
Okay. This is what you should have done in Channel 2 a couple of days ago.
Oh, you're telling me now what I should have done in Channel 2? Okay.
Yeah.
I'm trying to ask a question, but I'm not allowed to, so I'm giving you the stage. Come on.
Look, in my opinion, most of the voters in Israel are from the right wing. However, the leaders of the parties might go with the left although they got their seats from the right. Okay, like Kahlon, like Lieberman, etc. And also the religious parties might, like Shas. Shas are right-wing voters, but Deri might take them to the left.
So what I'm trying to understand is, because we're seeing some kind of a special, in one way or another, election campaign that we didn't see before, because we're seeing something of let's put all the forces together to try to take the position from Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. At the end, let's look like at the 18th of March, and we will see that Benjamin Netanyahu is getting the majority of the votes. And let's just small steps behind are the Labour Party. Who do you think that will go with the Labour and actually will get the certificate to create the government?
Well, that's the oxymoron that I was trying to convey to Oni. You can count as much as you want the voters' opinions, but they're voting for parties. They're voting for delegates. And when the delegates face coalition negotiation, the right and left becomes really centric, because you don't necessarily hear really clear-cut statements from the candidates as to their rightist or leftist oppositions. Now, what we will see, I believe, we will see the two leaders negotiating pre-election coalitions, which they're doing right now. For instance, Yair Lapid will most likely rather go with Bougie and Livni and not go with Netanyahu, because what happened in the last coalition, there are disagreements. Kahlon, which was exited from the electoral system, yes, I think might bear some ill will towards Benjamin Netanyahu and might think about the labor movement coalition.
And we are talking about two big parties, which means that Benjamin Netanyahu might win the elections, but he might not be the prime minister.
He might win the majority of votes, but he might be the head of the largest party, just as Tzipi Livni was. And another fact, which we all should take into consideration, both the ultra-Orthodox parties, Shas and Agudat Israel, have been sitting in the past with the Labor in one coalition.
And more than that, let's not forget that they sat in the last 2 years in the opposition, and they are really angry about that.
I think what will happen is that after the election, we'll have a Turkish bazaar, which the politicians, they really don't care about their feelings or thoughts or beliefs. They mainly care about their seats. So it will end up with who is going to give more to which party, and this will decide the form of government we'll have. I don't exclude the situation in which, at the end of the day, Bougie and Bibi, Mr. Herzog and Mr. Netanyahu,
they will find themselves in a unity government?
Yes.
That's always on the table, but I disagree. I don't think we'll see a lot. We'll see a lot of emotions there.
Let's try to see and try to understand at least what is happening with the Israeli society in the last let's say in the last few months, or in the last few years, because it seems that also the Israeli society, sometimes people are telling me, you want to know where the wind is blowing, just go on a taxi and start asking taxi drivers. And it seems that the taxi drivers, the voice of the taxi drivers, they're not voting Likud this time.
Or Kahlon.
They were voting Kahlon. They are voting Kahlon because they're telling me, you know what?
Kahlon.
You see my phone? I'm paying less for the last 3 years, 4 years.
And that's why I'm going to vote for him. For my apartment, right?
But this is the way. This is the way to convince the people.
I think that people have had enough with the economic burden. We said that. We sat in this studio, and we said it's about the economy. Period. We have over 35% of the Israeli family households under the poverty line. 36% of the kids in Israel are under the poverty line. We have a lot of people here who cannot even dream about buying their first home or first apartment. We have issues with subsidiaries, we have issues with water, we have issues with taxes, electricity, and so on. Somebody needs to give an outlet, a solution. As a result, I think the Israeli society is going through this cognitive dissonance, while they still, and I agree with Ronnie, they still think, I'm a Likudnik, I vote for the Likud. But for the last 20 years, these guys were in power, and my situation has gone worse. In the United States, it's clear-cut. You ask one question. Compared to 4 years ago, what is your economic... No, compared to 4 years ago, what's your economic situation?
In Israel,
better, equal, or worse?
In Israel, you can't ask this question because the elections are
every 2 years.
Every 2 years.
Yes.
Anyways, but what I think, what you sell in the elections is hope. And I agree 100% this time with you that the current situation is the economy. It's the economy and the standard of living, which is very difficult for people to live here. And unless there is going to be a war or something, this is going to be the issue. The one who will promise them the most hope, they will get the votes of the people.
Well, we still have a lot more days to speak about Benjamin Netanyahu, the Likud, the Avodah, and everyone. And of course, I will see you around in this table yet again. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for coming here. And we're going out for a small break, 2 minutes, and then we will be back with the rest of the news today. Israeli elections, harsh criticism towards Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu after he unveils a plan for a two-party political system. Changing Mid-East alliances. Turkish media reporters Hamas chief Khalid Mash'al has been expelled from Qatar. Hamas denies, and the Israeli Foreign Ministry is quick to praise the move. Wintry weather hits across the Middle East. Jerusalem, Syria, and Lebanon are expecting a snowstorm to strike tonight. Welcome back to the news today. We begin now with a potential major sign of change in the Middle East web of alliances. Turkish media reports that Qatar has expelled Khalid Mash'al from his long-time home base there. Mash'al is thought to be headed for a new home base in Turkey. Hamas, for its part, denies the reports. Meanwhile, Israel's foreign ministry was quick to welcome the reported decision, saying Israeli Foreign Minister Lieberman and other officials promoted the move during this past year. And to understand if it's true, if it's not, with me here in the studio is Senior Middle East Analyst Ali Waqid. Good evening. Thank you very much for coming. So, is it true? He is really expelled, and why, and how come now?
It is on the direction to be a true story. Qatar is in the middle of a change in its political and foreign policy, and we saw last week Qatar and Egypt reconciliated. We saw 2 weeks ago, or few weeks ago, Qatar and Saudi Arabia got reconciliated, and of course it was a question of time when will Hamas pay the price of these new alliances of Qatar. Due to the traditional system in the region, it is not expected in the coming days to see the Qatari Foreign Ministry declare that it is expelling Khalid Mashal. It is more probable to see that Hamas will declare that it is reshuffling its position in the world and position of its leadership. And as part of this reshuffling, Hamas leadership moved from Qatar most probably to Turkey. And Lucy, it is not an accident. It is not by mistake that it was the Turkish media that published the story. We know that many elements in the Turkish society are not welcoming Khalid Mashal.
Ali, how it's going to affect, of course, Khalid Mashal is directly going to affect the Gaza Strip and Hamas on the Gaza Strip. How is it going to affect the area? Because the last time that something like that happened, or that Hamas didn't get money and was isolated, we saw that we started, let's say, a clash with
I'm afraid, Lucy, that if it will affect it in a very negative way. We know that the Hamas leadership is almost begging Iran to renew its support and to replace the Muslim Brotherhood and to replace Qatar. A delegation of Hamas visited Iran lately, and Khalid Mashal is in the last days working on renewing this acts of Hamas, Iran, of getting back Hamas into this alliance of Iran, Hezbollah, Syria, which means that the alternative to the expel of Khalid Mashal will be probably worse to Israel and to the region than when it was Khalid Mashal supported by the Qataris.
Perfect. Just perfect story. Ali Waked, thank you very much for this. A female suicide bomber entered a police station and blew herself up in Istanbul's historic Sultanahmet district today, killing one police officer and injuring another. The woman spoke English after entering the police station and told police she had lost her wallet before setting off the explosion. Her nationality and identity are unknown at this point. Another day of violence in Iraq and Syria, with 11 people killed in an apparent IS attack in Anbar province. This while Kurdish forces continue to make gains against the jihadist militants in the embattled Syrian town of Kobani. I-24 News reporter Shaiban Ari has the details.
Violence is raging on all fronts of the fight against the Islamic State terrorist group. In Iraq's Anbar province, 11 people were killed and 18 others wounded Tuesday when dozens of militants believed to be members of IS attacked a number of army positions using a suicide bomber, rocket-propelled grenades, and machine guns in the town of Jubat al-Shamia, northwest of the capital, Baghdad. Most of those killed belong to Iraqi security forces and Sunni militias who have joined the fight against IS. Also in Anbar province, in recent weeks, the Islamic State group has repeatedly targeted the Ain al-Assad army base with artillery and rocket fire. Around 300 U.S. troops serve at the base in an advisory capacity and have yet to take part in any combat. Meanwhile, much attention is being turned north to Mosul, the capital of Nineveh province currently under IS control. A large-scale Iraqi military effort to liberate the city is now being discussed, but so far divisions between Sunni and Kurdish forces over strategy and priorities have delayed any action.
Our beloved Nineveh awaits the battle which we will fight with the support of the Almighty God and with the hard efforts of our armed forces, relying in our people from the north to the south and backed by our friends and allies.
Tuesday marked Army Day in Iraq, with leaders taking part in subdued remembrance ceremonies which contrasted heavily with the chaos that continues to reign in much of the country. In one of the more prominent battles in Syria, it appears progress is being made. The Syrian Observatory for Human Rights states that Kurdish forces now control 80% of the symbolic border town of Kobani, following further gains against the jihadist militants. 8 U.S.-led airstrikes targeted areas near Kobani, destroying a number of IS positions. Many will be hoping this positive momentum can spread elsewhere.
A military court in Israel has sentenced Hussam Kawasmi, the Hamas member from Hebron, was convicted in the planning and execution of the kidnapping and murder of the 3 Israeli teens in the West Bank in June. Kawasmi was sentenced to 3 consecutive life terms in prison, or 75 years. The kidnapping case flared up the West Bank and eventually led to Israel's Operation Protective Edge in the Gaza Strip. According to the Israeli Security Service, Kawasmi introduced the 2 kidnappers, equipped them, and assisted them in going underground. He pleaded guilty during the trial. The anti-Islamic movement in Germany seems to be stepping up. Around 18,000 people attended one immigration rally in Dresden last night, organized by the Pegida group. Counter demonstrations around the country brought around 30,000 to the streets to oppose what they see as a concerning wave of Islamophobia. I-24 News reporter Uri Shapiro has more.
The angry people march, waving banners saying "Stop the Islamization in Europe" and chanting against the Muslim population. A record 18,000 protesters took to the streets of Dresden, Germany Monday night in a mass rally organized by the far-right group Patriotic Europeans Against Islamization in Europe, also known as Pegida. They were demonstrating their concern over the rising number of migrants in their country in what seems to be one of the most tense times in Europe's balance between Muslims and local residents.
I think the worst part in all of this is that this is a movement against the opening of society. They want to create their own community because they think it was better like that. I think that's really terrible.
But elsewhere in Germany, around 30,000 people gathered to demonstrate against Pegida. In Cologne, the authorities switched off the light of the famous cathedral in protest at the anti-Islamic wave sweeping the country. Earlier that day, German Chancellor Angela Merkel urged Germans to stay away from the anti-migrant demonstrations.
You're unwavering when it comes to advocating for tolerance and freedom. I want to say that again. Your commitment against right-wing extremism, we argued strongly about the question of banning the far-right NPD, is undisputed and of prime value to this country.
According to a poll published recently by Stern magazine, 1 out of 8 Germans would join an anti-Islamic rally in his hometown. This surely is a fact which raises not only concern, but also dark memories from the past.
Yes, and to understand a little bit more about this new phenomenon, with me is German journalist Ulrich Zahm. Good evening. Thank you very much for joining us.
Yeah, good evening.
So, Ulrich, let's try to understand what happened that it got to that point that 18,000 people are going out to the street and actually demonstrating against Muslims.
Well, that is one side of the story, as you've mentioned, because there have been 30,000 demonstrators elsewhere. I think that in Germany, people are simply panicking, and a few thousand people are, in fact, afraid of Islam or Islamists, and Islamophobia is considered as something very, 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 very bad, because Islam, as you know, is the religion of love, etc., and therefore you're not supposed to say anything bad about Islamic terror, Islamists, or ISIS, or whatever.
But Ulrich, what is causing this panic?
Well, you know that there has been some kind of a terror of ISIS and others, Daesh, or whatever you call it, and normal people, many people, are afraid of Islam, and they are afraid of the mounting number of Muslims in Germany, in Europe. And I believe that this is the reason why some of them go into the streets. On the other side, there are many more Germans who demonstrate against this phenomenon.
And so, you know, instead of actually that these 30,000 people who are going and demonstrating against this, the government is not asking itself how come it got to that point, how come maybe the way that we're treating the minorities, maybe the way that we ignored or didn't ignore or behaved, or the let's say phases that are happening in the German society, that actually the government is not doing anything?
First of all, you must understand that the major demonstration you've mentioned in Dresden took place in a place where there are hardly any Turks or Muslims. So it's they probably watch too much TV and have seen the things that are happening in Iraq and Syria, and they are afraid. And you read in the newspapers about what's going on in France and elsewhere. People are afraid because Islam, which is said to be part of German society, still is not according, or doesn't act according to German, to the German way of life. They are talking in Germany about canceling Christmas markets and not to sing Christmas songs in schools and kindergartens.
Yeah, maybe this is the things that Muslims fail to understand in Europe. If you want to live the European life, maybe you need to start actually living them and respect them. Oleg Zab, thank you very much for this. Yes. For more complicated things, or less complicated, a long battle ended in Florida last night as the state lifted a temporary ban on same-sex marriage. It marked Florida the 36th state in the U.S. to allow gay couples to marry, and many wasted no time to begin celebrating. More from Ayman Siksik.
Wedding bells rang in Florida at the stroke of midnight Monday as the ban on same-sex marriages ended statewide. In several counties in the state, court clerks rushed to issue marriage licenses overnight for same-sex couples.
We got it!
It's amazing for the state of Florida. We are finally here. We're finally on board with the rest of the country, and each other state that hasn't lifted the ban, they're going to follow suit, I'm sure, soon.
Clerks throughout the state prepared to begin issuing marriage licenses to same-sex couples on Tuesday as well, when a stay expires on a ruling by a district judge who had objected to the ban on gay marriage.
Families, like ours have stepped up and stood out and said, here's who we are, and we just want to be treated like everyone else.
But not everyone is as happy with the change. Florida's Attorney General, Pam Bundy, is still looking to uphold the 2008 ban on same-sex marriage, but her efforts to block the Monday weddings was denied by the U.S. Supreme Court. For some couples in the Miami-Dade County, the permission to marry had been a long time coming.
I feel a sense of peace and relief that we can now be equals to everybody else and have our relationship recognized after 15 years and one child later.
The addition of Florida's 19.9 million people means that 70% of Americans now live in states where gay marriage is legal.
Let's go to economy in the meantime. And with me now from our economy magazine is Daniel Roth. Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening to us, but not good evening for Europeans who are paying in euro, or yes, or the euro is doing really bad.
The euro is doing badly. There's winners and losers all over the place. What we know is that the euro is doing very badly.
Okay, so if the euro is doing very, very bad, how come? Because we just talked about like 2 weeks ago, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, I don't even remember, that the dollar started like jumping up, and now it seems that what is happening? What is the process?
Listen, so the reality is that how well a currency is doing there's a million factors. It doesn't tell us a lot about the fundamentals of the economy, but we can see that the stock market drops across the world we're seeing right now that's really what's fundamentally giving us better information, because at the end of the day, all of the economic structures that we have are based essentially on mood, on how confident people are in the systems, and people are not confident in Europe right now. People aren't confident in the world right now because of the drop in oil prices, which originally was seen as this good thing. Consumers can now spend less on energy, can spend more on toys or what have you. Now that it's been going on for half a year and the price has dropped below $50 a barrel, so more than half since June, people are really worried. People are wondering, well, maybe this is speaking to a broader problem. And so this brings us back to the currency issue in Europe, which is actually rooted in the systems that Europe has put in place to try to get itself past this hump of the last few years of recession. And the systems were based on austerity, which has essentially been proven to not really work. It leaves too many people in the dust.
How much is we can say maybe the situation is in Greece is influencing this?
Absolutely. So this is a case in point. Greece is looking at electing a left-wing party that says, no, we're not going to pay back this debt. It's gouging us. It's not fair. The entire system was not fair. We're not going to put these kinds of austerity measures on our people, because they've looked around and kind of seen that whatever gains austerity measures have made have been few and far between in terms of picking up unemployment, for example, which is a major, major concern in Greece for most Greek people.
Just amazing. So is there any, let's say, look into the future where we can see the stop of this decrease?
Well, it's the stability of Europe's economy, the stability of the global economy is really based on how much the lower class, the working classes can be lifted up, given work, given enough money to consume, because that's what the economy is based on. Without money, for the average person, the economic system kind of crumbles.
Yeah, tell us about it. Daniel Roth, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Many cities around the world are used to massive snowstorms and the mess that comes with it. But in Jerusalem, it's a rather rare event and can shut down the entire holy city. Well, were we talking about the entire holy city? We're talking about the entire Israel. Maxim Peres and Shai Ben Ari go out into the cold to see how the whole country is preparing for the storm.
The authorities in Tel Aviv are actively getting prepared for the storm about to hit Israel. Here in the city center, traffic lights and road signs are reinforced with concrete to withstand the blasts of wind. The streets of the White City do not show any sign of their usual vitality. For example, business was particularly low in the artists' market, which is normally crowded.
As you see, I'm ready. If the weather turns bad, I pack everything and go home.
However, the authorities' main preoccupation is focused on the coastline. With the impending storm, the sea is threatening to overflow the promenade. Mechanical diggers have erected these massive dikes of sand over hundreds of meters along the coast.
Here in Israel, a tsunami is nothing more than a few waves. Our winter is relatively calm. We usually have 2 or 3 days of storm, 1 week tops. But we always get prepared with the biggest measures.
Not far from here, kite surfers are thrilled, enjoying the perfect weather conditions. In spite of the danger and the low water temperature, many of them join the party.
It's a great day for us. We wait for this moment all year long to come and surf. It's awesome.
This storm is expected to paralyze large sectors of Israel, with snow falling mainly in the north and in the area surrounding Jerusalem. Tomorrow, though, remains the big day. That is when we are expected to see the waves here behind me reach heights of up to 10 meters and winds of over 100 kilometers per hour. Tomorrow will also be the day when we discover just how well the Israeli authorities are prepared for dealing with the challenge of Mother Nature. Shai Ben Ari, I-24 News, Jaffa.
Shai Ben Ari always doing the hard missions, yes. Avraham Burg, formerly head of the Jewish Agency and Parliament Speaker for the Labour Party, has joined the Arab-Jewish movement Hadash as he states the entire Israeli discourse shifted to extreme nationalism. I-24 News correspondent Shahar Peled on the challenges that now lie ahead of the emerging Arab coalition.
It was a groundbreaking Saturday night when, following a 5-hour-long heated debate, the board members of Hadash, the joint Jewish-Arab party, voted overwhelmingly in favor of a united election ticket for all Israel's Arab parties.
It's a combination, it's a reconciliation, it's a compromise between different views.
But the Hadash movement, also known as the Democratic Front for Peace and Equality, had another surprise awaiting. Former Parliament Speaker Avraham Burg joined its ranks, taking a leap from his decade-ago Labour Party membership.
For you it's a leap, for me it's a walk.
I'm 10 years, almost 11 years out of the political system, in which I dedicated most of my intellectual time to think. Israeli discourse that was a mild national discourse became an uber-nationalistic one. And this is wrong.
Borg, who came to the Nazareth gathering from his Jerusalem home, told his new friends that driving on the holy Jewish day of rest to attend the meeting was a life-saving violation.
I wear a yarmulke, that's my personal faith, it's my personal relations with the Creator. And the fact that I move into a party which represents the majority of its voters are coming from the Arab sector, it's actually a privilege for cooperation.
From an outsider point of view, the unification of all Arab representative parties might seem trivial, but the ideological gaps are tremendous. For the sake of comparison, it is similar to expecting voters of the left-wing Meretz party to accept a joint movement with the right-wing Likud and the ultra-Orthodox Shas. Borg, for his part, doesn't think Hadash should paint itself into a corner by the national labels of society.
My suggestion is to take all the liberal progressive forces who believe in secular egalitarian politics and actually to replace the current discourse.
But the upcoming elections mark a significant threat for all the Arab parties after the threshold for entering the parliament was raised from 2% to 3.25% of the vote.
We prefer to reconcile probably on some of the principles and to succeed in these elections.
One of the Hadash party major principles is women's representation, with their official agenda including equality between the sexes in all fields. However, among their current 4 representatives, there are no women.
We're speaking about making sure that an Arab woman will be represented in this coming election.
In fact, party member Nabila Espagnoli herself was intended to enter the parliament upcoming March as part of a pre-decided party commitment.
But Bibi Netanyahu blew it in our face, and that's why we have to go now for a new election.
Polls suggest as much as 11 seats for the joint list of the Arab factions, indeed setting up a new page in the Israeli political arena.
Yes. An Egyptian court banned the annual festival of a Jewish rabbi in a Nile Delta village. The decision by the administrative court in Alexandria was in response to a lawsuit filed by a lawyer who said that the celebration of Moroccan Rabbi Abu Khatsera's birthday violates local traditions. Ayman Siksik has the story.
Jewish communities in Israel and the diaspora have expressed anger at an Egyptian court ruling banning a Jewish celebration of the birth of Rabbi Yaakov Abu Khatsera.
The court hereby rules the cancellation of the festival of the Jewish Chacham Yaakov Abu Khatsera for violating Egyptian security standards.
The court cited moral offenses committed in previous years at the 3-day festival. But Magda Haroun, the president of Egypt's Jewish community, said the decision violates Egypt's agenda respecting all 3 monotheistic religions.
The court's decision is unconstitutional. Egypt's constitution reserves the right of members of all 3 religions to worship in peace.
Haroun may be right to worry about a growing lack of religious tolerance in Egypt. The festival, in honor of the 19th century Chacham, or religious sage, has seen government opposition before, as it was cancelled after the 2011 revolt against then-President Hosni Mubarak. Local residents, though, had previously complained of the disruptive security presence that comes with the festival.
The festival shuts down the area for 3 days. Schools, businesses, everything is closed.
They leave bottles of alcohol behind. This is against God. Every year we deal with the same mess.
Monday's ruling now calls on the Egyptian government to make the ban on the festival permanent. Perhaps the most controversial clause of the court's decision is the call to remove Abu Khatsera's historic tomb from the country's list of recognized shrines. This would likely delegitimize the symbols of the Jewish faith in Egypt. But the decision could also have wide-ranging meaning for Egypt's relations with its neighboring country, as the now cancelled festival has taken place since the 1979 peace deal with Israel.
And you you just heard him, and for a look at literary, you would like to see him. And I'm with Ayman Siksik. Good evening.
Good evening, Lucy.
So how are you?
I'm good, and I want to ask you something.
Yes.
Aren't you sick of all the power in the world being held by men?
Of course.
So, well, have I got the right book for you this time around?
Really?
It's the first book of 2015 for bookmarks.
Okay.
The End of Power by Moises Naim. And it discusses one of these many topics about power is the shifts of power from tyrants and autocrats to democracies.
Which can be interesting because we experienced in the last few years actually this with the Arab Spring, maybe the try to change this autocracy and dictatorship.
Exactly, and he discusses the Arab Spring as a primary example of showing how anti-establishment movements are now taking all the power. Now, of course, one of the results is total chaos, like we've seen in Egypt and Iraq and many other places, but he's saying that generally this is a positive move. So even tyrants who still do have power, like Putin, are more and more limited in what they can achieve. And we know Putin is now cornered by the West with all the sanctions. It's no longer true that these all-powerful men can just do whatever they want. The world is not letting it happen anymore.
So the world is not letting it happen anymore, and we're going now to what road? To the road where we're equal, everyone, like women, men?
Well, this may be still a little far away from us, but power is changing in the sense that it's dispersing a little more evenly than before, and this is true also for business. 20 years ago, a company like Kodak, who was at the top of the world and was a monopoly in photography, just went bankrupt a few years ago. On the other hand, Instagram, which has 13 employees, was sold to Facebook for $1 billion, a historic amount. So again, a small
changes.
Exactly, small micropower taking over a superpower.
Yeah, just see what is happening here in our studios. How many women are here in I-24 News? This is where the future is. I'm Siksik. Thank you very much. Always a pleasure. Thank you very much. And we're going out for a small break, 2 minutes, and then we will be back for the rest of the news today, which means the Daily Debate. Don't go anywhere.